time, and you take selfies, right? I guess most of us who have iPhones have taken selfies, but do you take career selfies? My next guest says you should. Dr. Tracy Wilen has devoted a lot of her time to the impact of technology on society, work, careers, and she's been a scholar at Stanford University, has held leadership positions at companies including Apple, HP, Cisco, and she's authored 11 books. Her newest is Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends, and she's on the line right now. Dr. Wilen, thank you very much, first of all, for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Barry. Thanks for having me.
So we all know what selfies are. What is a career selfie?
Well, Barry, Google ran a statistic about a week and a half ago that smartphone owners actually take 93 million selfies per day.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and
Really?
They look at their devices over 100 billion times per day. So I started to reflect on if we spent that much time on our careers and took a selfie about our careers, we'd all be in better position. And so that's really how this started.
So practically speaking, what does that mean?
Well, practically speaking, it's taking time to evaluate and use time to assess your own career. In fact, when I look for those statistics, it's about an hour and a half a year that people spend on their own personal career and job planning. And that to me is not enough time, especially if you're working probably in our generation 50 to 60 years.
So what would you suggest?
So I tell people that it's probably time that you need to look at the workforce and some of the changes that are happening because we have shifted from a classical world to a digital world. And so I came up with 10 trends that if you're not on top of, that you may want to be more aware of.
Okay, so can you start at the top, I guess?
Yeah, so the first one is all about contribution. So if you're working in a firm, it used to be the loyal worker was the valued worker, which is still true, but now it's today all about the entrepreneurial employee. This has to do with succession planning, people who are going to leave the companies after people retire, and so the entrepreneurial employee, the someone who takes ownership of their job, is highly valued.
Now, what does that mean, take ownership of their job? I mean, people, they're all working hard. A lot of people here working hard and around Montreal and, around the country working very hard. Doesn't necessarily mean they're taking ownership, though?
Well, what it is someone who could add value every day to their position, not being told what to do, because everybody gets a job description, but thinking of ways to add value to the job they're in, whether it's increasing sales, enhancing a customer experience, fine-tuning a process, reducing costs. These are all quantifiable and useful measurements that companies can use, right, to help them move their businesses ahead.
Okay. Makes sense. Another tip, please.
Another tip, I think, is that many of us have been either groomed to be a generalist, that you can move around a company, or later on in years, right, a specialist, a specialist in HR, a specialist in marketing. And today, companies are really looking for more strategic people who actually have general skills and specialist skills. So that could be a marketing person who also has the ability to run an operation. And I think that's important because as firms need to be more flexible in a competitive world, they need people who can really take on a leadership role and understand the whole business.
So it's really be like as well-rounded as possible, right? Is, I guess, the bottom line message from some of these suggestions, which makes a lot of sense. And, I just wonder how much time people have to necessarily devote that kind of time. I mean, if you're talking about students, for instance, if they're in university and they could, but what about somebody who's, say, in their early 40s, mid-40s, 50s, what would you tell them?
That's right. And I think a lot of companies are tapping into this need of people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so more companies are embracing things like lateral job moves, tours of duty, sometimes they're called, where you rotate people through the firm so they can develop skills and experience. Externships, some companies are even exploring putting key employees at a customer site or a vendor for a while so they can understand the full scope of the business.
Right.
Or joining cross-functional teams. And I think cross-functional teams and special projects are easy, stressful ways that people can keep their jobs and then join a team to develop more skills and experience.
We're almost out of time. Not quite. Can you give me at least one more step, please, Doctor?
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the shift of the firm is not your family, but rather your team. I think many people assume they join a family, they stay there for life, they take care of them like a mom and dad. And that reality has quickly changing that there's a two-way exchange between you and the firm. You work there, you get paid, you get skills, you get experience, and in exchange, right, the firm pays you and you give them a contribution.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, I think so. I think the world, when you look at the velocity of adults today, many adults are changing jobs every 4 to 5 years. So the reality of staying at a firm for a long time is not as realistic today as it was in the past.
I mean, even in sports, you see that. Guys back in the day, they'd play on the same team for 15 years and then they would retire. Nowadays, when that happens, that's extremely, extremely rare. And I guess anybody coming out of university these days should not really expect to necessarily be in one place for a very, very long time.
Not at all, and I agree with you. The sports team analogy is a very good one because the sports team is pulling together top talent from wherever they live now on some of these teams. And I think that's how people have to view it: is how do I keep myself as as a highly skilled, positive brand person that I am attractive to many kinds of companies. And I think for a college student in particular, they should make a plan of having many stops and experiences. The average time now recommended by recruiters is 4 to 7 years at different companies or different jobs within companies, and I bet that would even accelerate as well.
Dr. Tracy Wilen, the author of Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends, one of the many books that she's written on this subject. And I thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Sure. CJAD time 2:20.